Dr. Tom Cowan is here. Okay, Dr. Cowan, you said that you don't watch the media a whole lot. You don't watch corporate news that often, which I don't blame you for doing. But I'm still going to ask you about this just because I thought it was interesting. So, this is the headline that's happening right now. Anti vaxxers think God destroyed a Pfizer facility with a tornado. Look, like you said, you don't really know what happened. I have no clue what really happened. I was just going with this is what they said. There's a strong tornado in the area. It rips this plant apart and essentially destroys it, throws medicine and medical tools all over the place. And so it didn't take long for a lot of people online to say, "I'm happy about this. I'm happy that a tornado socked it to Pfizer." And so then the media, of course, has to start fact checking the whole God destroyed a Pfizer facility. Like, how do you fact check that? I don't even know. But this, to me, this is where I think the media gets nervous. The corporate media, anyway, gets nervous, is because this is one of the reasons that people, I think, were expressing their angst about it. Contrary to claims, Pfizer plant damaged by tornado didn't hold COVID vaccines. And one of the things I just didn't read a whole lot of in these articles was an understanding, because there seems to be a I don't even call it a lack of understanding, but a disgust from the corporate or just big press, which is my old industry, towards people who were questioning the COVID vaccines, and so and frankly criticizing big pharmaceutical companies in general during the last couple of years, because they were, of course, they were purported to be the messiahs of our our existence over the last couple of years. So how would you not like them? You must be anti-science. And there's just not a lot of a whole understanding. It's just really a pushback to saying kind of people are like this is a intolerant, brainless movement of people who hate science, and it's getting worse, and we should be nervous about that. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Not necessarily that either one of us can confirm or deny anything about what actually happened, but just the media's perception of it all, perception of the fact that there would be people who would like it, I guess, whether you agree with that or not, that you should like it that a Pfizer plant got destroyed. I thought it was just interesting to see them fact checking that there would be people that are cheering this on. Anyway, thanks for coming on. That's my opening. Anything you'd like to say before we get into it?
I used to sort of make a joke that I would say that everything I heard on, whether it's CNN or MSNBC or Fox or any of those, was not true. Everything I heard there was not true. And then one day I remember seeing, I think it was Anderson Cooper, and it was like, and the first thing he said was, today is Wednesday, like August, whatever, 3rd or something, 2015. And I looked on my calendar, and lo and behold, he was correct. So now I don't say everything they say is wrong. I just say most things, because it turns out that one was correct.
Yeah.
Everything else I think was wrong, but that one, I mean, they have their agenda. People have to realize that, and just to have a comment on this. I first learned this, it's about 44 years ago, from a guy named Noam Chomsky. And it really opened my eyes, and it has to do with intention. And he said, he gave a talk, and the main thing of the talk was the US had won the war in Vietnam. And when you hear that, you think, are you kidding? Like we left in disgrace and all that stuff. But when you realize that the goal was not to occupy South Vietnam or North Vietnam, or put change their government or anything. The purpose, the intent was to teach them and anybody else a lesson that if you mess with the empire, so to speak, you're going to pay. And that was very successful. And so when you realize, along this line, that the purpose of, education, so-called school in this country, is not to educate children, right? That's like ridiculous. It's to indoctrinate them. And so they're very good at it. And along this lines of Pfizer, people think that the purpose of Pfizer or drug companies is to help people get well or healthy. But that's not true. Their purpose is to make you sick and sell drugs and essentially get you addicted to their products, which then increases their power and profit. And so they're very good at that. And if you don't want somebody to profit from making you sick, you might not like them. Or if you don't want an institution to indoctrinate your children with a bunch of nonsense, you may not like school, and on and on. So people have to start questioning the intent of these institutions. And so once you realize that it isn't an accident that Pfizer's products make people sick and addict them to taking their drugs, right? That's their business model, right? That's how it works. So some people are, don't like that, and so they cheer that on. I don't know what happened to that plant, but I can understand. And I'm not like for destruction of people's property or people getting hurt or anything, right? I'm not advocating that. But I can see why that would not feel like a tragedy to some people.
Right. I totally agree with, especially like the last thing you said, because I tell people quite a bit. I do notice the near rage, I would say, among a lot of people for where we are right now with freedom of choice and information dissemination and speech and all that stuff. But I think sometimes if you go down that rage hole, or all the time when you go down that rage hole and you get into that destructive category, I think you could play into exactly what the powers that be would love to label you as just like a crazy lunatic person who needs to be locked up. So I do think the reaction, it's good to bring that up because I talk about that quite a bit. I think in this particular case, the thing that I was interested about with exactly like what you were saying, why people dislike the big pharmaceutical companies or the government's relationship with them. And when you read these articles that obviously have picked up on the cheering section when this particular event happened with the Pfizer facility, their interpretation of it is that there are these really just crazy anti-science Neanderthals out there, and this trend towards crazy anti-science Neanderthalism, I suppose, when the real interpretation, or at least from my perspective, would be maybe these people are seeing something that we're not. And okay, maybe you disagree with their, with people's read on it as far as like it's an act of God, or I'm glad that it got destroyed and all this stuff, this garbage is everywhere. But at least trying to understand where they're coming from, to me, is totally lost right now. It's been lost for a long time, but it went way, way underground during COVID, trying to understand why people were rebelling against what was being forced down their throats with the mandates and everything else. I would see videos, for instance, in local news stations owned by the company that owned the one that I used to work for, where the people that they interviewed that they would allow on TV to question the COVID vaccines, for instance, were talking about it being the mark of the beast. It was another one just like this, where it's like, they're saying it's an act of God. These people are so crazy. And in that particular case, it was like, they're saying it's the mark of the beast. They're so crazy. These are two things that like nobody can actually fact check. I don't know how in my 2 hours at TV news time that I had to generate a story, I could go figure out if it was really the mark of the beast and or if this is a mark. So I just see it as it's a pattern that I have noticed a lot recently, which is fact checking claims that make your particular group of people on the outside of the safe zone look extra crazy from your point of view, and something that nobody could fact check anyway. And instead of having people like you who could talk about these issues in a real scientific way where you could fact check, those people don't get on. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Do you see what I'm saying
Yeah,
here? Like, it's like
it's basically called the straw man argument.
yeah, right.
And it's a common strategy or technique of all dictators and tyrants and all, and anybody who wants to confuse and bamboozle people is you get an issue, and then you find the people on the quote other side of the issue who have themselves illogical, irrational, and confused takes on it. You claim that they represent the other quote the other side, and then you show how nutty they are, and then you quote win the argument. And I can tell you, if anybody from Pfizer or the fact checking about science wants to have a discussion with me about science, I'm happy to do
it. Yeah, me, and I'm happy to host it
every time.
I'm happy to host it, not on YouTube. Speaking of which, everybody who's watching on YouTube, we're live on Rumble, ROKFIN, and Locals, and that's where we're going to continue the conversation in full. So that Dr. Cowan, well, actually, no, not because we're trying to evade censorship, really just because we like the other platforms better. Just like them a lot better. I always say that. That's how we're going. Okay, Dr. Cowan, this is where I'm gonna leave the tease so that people will follow us to the other side. I thought this was hilarious. Conspiracy theory doctor surrenders medical license. Not that you just surrender your medical license or anything, but I thought, man, he gets to be called conspiracy theory doctor before everybody jumped in on it now, and now it's like the cool term. Now if you're a conspiracy theory doctor, cool. But you went through quite a bit on your journey, which I think some of my viewers, I think a lot of them are very familiar with you, but some of them might not be. So I wanted to go through a little bit of what happened to you and where you are now. I know you've got you're very into food, and I know you know Joe Salatin, and you grow your own food. Are you in Florida now, by the way?
No, I'm upstate New York.
Oh, upstate New York. Okay. I need some advice on building a greenhouse for our property, but we have hurricanes down here, so it makes it a little bit more challenging. But everybody, don't forget, if you want to support my work, you can also get a great glass of wine. 50% off the wine itself, 50% off shipping. This is extremist altitude wine. You want to be an extremist but not go to federal prison, just soak your toes in for a little bit. This is amazing wine. I drink it myself, and it comes from a very remote region of Argentina, AllisonWinePromo.com, and it's a great way to support my work and keep interviews like Dr. Cowan coming on the channel. We got a couple new bottles in this one, so if you have already had the last three, go check them out, AllisonWinePromo.com. Sponsor's been with me since the very beginning. If you're a wine drinker, there's got to be a holiday coming up in the near future. I don't know what's coming up. Help me out, Labor Day. Something. There's a reason to drink. There's always a reason. When you hear people like Dr. Cowan talk about how terrible it is, then you could say, I'll just have a nice glass of wine to finish off my day. Or if maybe you're eating some amazing food that Dr. Cowan is going to talk all about with nutrition and health, it's a great way to pair. Again, AllisonWinePromo.com, 50% off the wine, 50% off shipping. And if you're watching on YouTube, we'll see you elsewhere. Okay, Dr. Cowan.